So let's just talk about that process a little bit. I know that a lot of people come to me and they say, oh, I have an idea for a fantasy game. Jeff, have you ever had the opportunity where you might actually pitch an original idea to a game company?
Well, sure. I'll go back to the tabletop stuff, but then move into video games. Just because the tabletop stuff was so cool, the situation was Acclaim Entertainment approaching Wizards of the Coast to get the license for Magic the Gathering. We went there with Marvel and DC already having spoken with them about doing comic books and so forth, Dark Horse as well, and I came there and I knew those guys from the Gateways days, but still they said, look, you know, what will make you guys distinguished from the what distinguishes you from all these big shot comic book companies that promise to release millions of copies of Magic the Gathering comic books onto the world. And I said, well, what we're going to do is help you to develop a fictional universe that ties all of the characters on the cards together. And they said, wow, that's really interesting. What's your specific recommendation? We are already thinking about that sort of thing. And when they asked that, I was paralyzed for a second. That was as far as I had thought it through. So I said, well, there's this land called Corindor, and it's on the world of Dominaria, and in this land the Hurloon Minotaur, and in that land the Shivan Dragon, and the Dagon Blackblade was born in this specific, and I was naming specific locations and a chronology and all that sort of thing. And a week later they said, you got the job. We are going to purchase Corindor from Jeff Gomez, and little did they know, that was my D&D campaign. So I scooped out the continent of Corindor and sold it to them for a lot of money. So that was a pitch. I didn't know it at the time, but I was pitching my own D&D campaign, and it got purchased by WotC. Later on, of course, there was the video game pitches, and this is really tough, guys. I mean, if you have an original fantasy world and you're not already a part of a hardcore development crew that is already working on AAA video games for consoles, you're kind of, the odds are way against you. This is why. Certainly I recommend as much using your business savvy and getting in with groups like this as anything else. Starlight Runner has a very unusual way of getting into the business from a fantasy world point of view, and you could actually learn from it, and I'll feel free sharing it with you. What we do is we keep very close tabs on the game engines. Every time a new game engine is developed that has a very specific set of technological specs that distinguishes it, we keep very close track of what that is, and we keep close track of the development houses that create them, and who is going where, and which house has a slightly weaker storytelling skill or world creation skill. Like, most of them are deckheads who are really grinding out code, but they don't have the best organizational fantasy world development skills. And then we go, hey, we're Starlight Runner. We created the world, of Corindor, the world of Galliana, the Lost Land for Turok, the world. There's a little track record behind us, and they go, okay. Come in and check this out. And then you have to be also willing to admit that you are not necessarily J.R.R. Tolkien. You're not going to impose your specific fantasy world 100% as is with this team. You're going to welcome their participation and integrate their ideas into your world, and that starts to get the ball rolling. Having a damn good agent helps a lot too.
So, Steve, I know that you've done a lot of original stories. So when you think about a fantasy game, how do you start in terms of building the world, especially in terms of the magic?
Well, it's not an easy question. We start by just tossing around ideas, concepts. Now, the Lovecraft games, Secrets of the Necronomicon, is actually, in many ways, a very interesting case because we were not taking any specific characters or anything from Lovecraft. It's not like when we did the Stephen Bruce game, which had all the characters and stuff from the books. Lovecraft was a field, it was a world, and it was trying to capture a sense of an atmosphere. So we designed this whole game, we designed all the plots, all the politics, all the interaction, and we still didn't have a magic system. We had lots of discussion about people doing magic and about how things were happening with the magic, but we didn't actually have the system in place until about 2 weeks before the game. And what we did, our big goal, the thing that we've been struggling with was trying to get the feel right. And this was the big piece. How do you do magic? You look at the feel that you want. How do you want magic to work in your game? In Lovecraft, magic is something you delve through ancient books that are hard to read, that are mysterious, that are not clear, and you try to puzzle out the spell, and if you get it right, things work, and if you don't get it right, you may not have to worry about it anymore. And so what we ended up doing was writing the books. We sat down, the Necronomicon was about 50 pages long, printed in a really hard to read, archaic looking font. We wrote about a dozen other books that are mentioned in the Lovecraft canon. And we scattered the magic system throughout the books so that the players, to figure out their spells, and people who knew some magic would start with some magic, some spells already given to them, and some knowledge of what they need to build. And then they'd have to go through these books and read these stories and read through the deranged ravings of Abdul al-Hazred or whatever, and piece together from the description of the story how it should work. In Dragon, on the other hand, Stephen Bruce's world, sorcery, very different. Sorcery isn't rituals and calling on elder gods, it's point your finger and go zap, and something happens. So we built a magic system with that concept, where sorcerers just had index cards that said, you can cast this spell, you can cast this spell, and how much power, whether or not they had to rest after, various things to get the feel of the books. In other fantasies, it's kind of the same process. It's a lot of the process is discussing how we want it to feel, how we want the world to behave, how we want the world to work for people who live in it, and banging on that till we have a world that holds together, and then building the magic in to fill it in and work according to those rules.